Welcome to BGCA Career Clips. Today, we're going to meet Nelly Miles on location at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. After 23 years with the GBI, Nelly is now the Public and Governmental Affairs Director. But her non-linear career path through forensic science shows how you don't have to have it all figured out when you graduate. Let's go meet her now.
Absolutely. It's very exciting because each day is different. Typically at the top of the day, what we're doing is tracking agency legislation. So that's legislation that the GBI needs. And so we're talking to our state legislators to get them interested in what we're doing, letting them know why we need the bills. We may actually go to committee meetings and testify in committee meetings. Sometimes we'll testify as a legislative liaison, or we'll have a subject matter expert. But regardless, the mission is to get agency legislation through the legislative process, eventually passing both chambers, the House and the Senate. I would say so. Our largest win probably was with our budget. There was a bill, it's called House Bill 19, that was able to fund a lot of priorities for the GBI. So it's going to allow our team to basically get out there and more easily solve cases. We also had a really major win when it comes to a specific piece of legislation that's going to assist our medical examiner's office. You may not know this, but right now we have a nationwide shortage of medical examiners, and those are doctors who are helping families determine what happened when a loved one dies. And so what we're going to be able to do with that bill is that we're going to be able to repay their loans. And that was exciting just because it's going to really give a good incentive for doctors to come to Georgia and work for the GBI. Well, what I'm going to do, so right now, my main job here at the GBI is to provide communications about what's happening at the GBI. So I'm working with the media and getting information out. I might have to go to actual crime scenes and give out information to the public about what's happening. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw you back to a day in the life of a forensic scientist, because I did that for a long time where I was a forensic chemist. And at the top of the day, when we're coming in, we're essentially looking to see what cases we want to work. And as a scientist, we have to work one case at a time. And I'll take a batch of cases out and I'll open up one case and I'll take a sample of that case and do what's called an analysis on that case. So we're running tests on it. And these are all tests that I learned about when I was in college. And now I'm able to apply as a GBI forensic scientist. So after we run those tests, I'm then getting information about what's on those tests. And then after I get that information, I am putting together a case report. And it's an official report to give my expert opinion about what is in that unknown piece of evidence. And then that evidence and that report then goes back to our customers. And in this case, our customers are law enforcement officers and our prosecutors. And when it's all said and done, that case may then have to go to court. And so on some days, I'd have to go testify in court as an expert witness. My first job ever was a drug chemist. And when I started to go through the training program, they would show me all kinds of drugs, which, by the way, you can't have done any drugs to work for the GBI. So it was a little bit awkward to get all these drugs and see them in real life. But I had to learn how to test these drugs and identify these drugs and become an expert in that area. So I was excited to do that because I was able to test those drugs for a number of years before I went on to a different route, and that was managing people in the chemistry section. My educational background is a little bit interesting because I'm first generation. Both of my parents are Nigerian. So if you know anything about West African parents, pretty much have a few options when it comes to what you want to be growing up. That's either doctor, lawyer, and at that time was teacher. I hear now it's engineer. So doctor, lawyer, teacher. I picked doctor. And so I just went to school thinking I wanted to be a doctor, but I really wasn't doing it for myself. I was doing it for my parents. I went to Emory University. I studied chemistry. I fulfilled my pre-med requirements. But when I graduated from college, even though I had that chemistry degree, I can't say that I was really ready to go to that next step and become a doctor. So I took the test and everything, but in the meantime, I was looking for other ways that I can use my chemistry degree. Because ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, if I got that degree, I said I was going to use that degree for at least a couple of minutes. But I ended up using it for 16 years because I met someone that worked for the GBI, and he exposed me to this whole world of forensics. I'd never heard of that before that time. And I started working for the GBI as a forensic chemist, and I was able to apply that chemistry degree and help law enforcement officers out with their cases. All right, so I'm going to have you go with me to our evidence receiving area. Yeah, just take a look at this area. We like to, in the crime lab, we refer to this as the alpha and the omega of the process because this is where everything begins. So when we're testing forensic evidence, we have to establish an internal chain of custody. That means that we are tracking where that evidence goes. And so law enforcement agencies all around the state, but specifically where we are at is going to be Metro Atlanta law enforcement agencies. They'll come in and they'll submit their evidence. And so oftentimes when we talk about evidence, you look here, we've got firearms evidence, arson evidence, evidence for DNA testing. So they'll take their evidence and they'll actually drop it off in a lockbox. And once they put it in a lockbox, they shut it. Just like if you think about a post office, you're dropping off mail and you shut that post office when you're done. That's what happens here. On the other side of the lockbox, we'll have evidence receiving technicians that will come and get that evidence. And then they're going to put it into the system. And then after that, guess what happens next? It goes to the various forensic disciplines so they can start testing it and getting it ready for those law enforcement agencies that submitted it. So now we're about to get into the chemistry section. So follow me down the hallways and I'll show you what we're doing here. Come on with me. I'm going to take you into one of our labs. You're going to see some real scientists working cases. All right. So what you have here is that the way it's set up, this is the lab area. As you can see, you have scientists. They're doing what I talked about earlier. They are getting evidence ready for analysis. A lot of them have already done some preliminary testing and they're just still trying to figure out what they have. So out here is the area where we have all our chemicals, all of our instruments and tools. So you can't eat out here. It's strictly lab work. So as you can see here, the one scientist, he's wearing his lab coat. That's PPE, proper protective equipment. This scientist here is probably checking her evidence and seeing what she has and putting it into our system. And kind of follow me down here. Another scientist looking through test tubes, trying to identify samples to figure out what we have. So that's what we do here. And if you look just in this space right here, we also have offices, little pods where they come in here so they can do their paperwork. So the big key right here is you got to separate it. So that means you want to eat, you're in a lab. You can't eat out here, but you can eat in there. So this is a real life lab. I told you before, to be a forensic chemist at the GBI crime lab, you need that chemistry degree like me. So I definitely encourage you to consider the GBI and the crime lab, for instance, to work in the forensic chemistry section. I'm going to talk to you about this large instrument room. So if you check out this room, you've got so many instruments. They're actually called gas chromatograph mass spectrometers. I don't need you to worry about that long word right now, but what I need you to understand is that we use these tools to identify unknown drugs. So earlier, you met some of our scientists. They were preparing tests and cases so that they can finish their testing. But what happens after they leave that room? It comes in here and they load those samples on these instruments and they usually run overnight. So that way in the morning, they're gonna come in here. After they drop these samples off here, they come over here and they can pick up their data to figure out what they have. Well, I will tell you, as a Black woman in STEM, what I really appreciated was going back to the schools and talking to young girls that look like me and encouraging them to do similar careers. I have had students that have kept in touch with me and checked in with me after they've come and had a chance to see what I did here in the lab. And so I will say I'm very proud to say that we have a very large representation of not only Black women in STEM, but women in STEM here at the GBI Crime Lab. I could not be prouder of that. One time, probably one of the craziest cases that I got, it's actually called a body case. So they found someone that had drugs at the airport. And I'm gonna give you the heads up, it was pretty smelly. So this is where someone took the drugs and they actually swallowed it. And if it goes in one way, there's only one way for it to come out. So as disgusting as that sounds, don't you worry. I had on my gloves, I had on my goggles, I had masks and my lab coat, and I was able to test that evidence in a hood. So I didn't have to deal with that too much, but I ended up being able to identify what they had. So I think it's just really rewarding to know that the information that I'm giving to law enforcement is helping them to solve cases. And so if they don't have all the answers, we're here to try to support them and give them those answers. This is going to be the area, this courtyard area. If you kind of look behind me, you see the GBI crime scene truck, you see the courtyard. This is going to be an area where some of our investigative units, they use this area as far as processing cases are concerned. So if there's a crime that happens in the state of Georgia, as GBI is a state criminal investigative agency, local law enforcement agencies, so if you have a police department or the sheriff's office, they'll pick up the phone and call the GBI to help them. And so this area is where we might help them with processing some of the evidence. If the GBI is responding to a scene, you probably haven't noticed it before today, but you'll see one of these crime scene trucks with all of their information and evidence and technology that they use to process a crime scene, rolling down that road to get to that scene to help local law enforcement. One of the best things about my career here at the GBI is that I know that I'm serving the public and helping people. It is just fascinating to know that the work that I'm doing is actually changing lives. I think one of the things that I'm learning now, and it took me 20-something years to figure it out, but the importance of relationships with people and a network. And I have found that it's not cliche to say it's about who you know as opposed to what you know. I think it's what you know is really important, but the people that you meet. So as you're in school now and you're going to start thinking about college soon, I encourage you to go meet people. If you're interested in working at a certain place, talk to your parents about trying to find someone that works in that area and get to know them. Spend a little bit of time with them. I know that we do that here at the GBI. We have an Agent for a Day program and in different programs that you may not be aware of that are out there. So you need to get to meet people, figure out what they do. What I would tell young people is that you really need to work on following your dreams and your passions. If there's something that you really enjoy doing and you're really good at, you need to figure out how can that become a career. For a long time, I was really focused on what other people wanted to do and what other people wanted me to do, I'd say. And at a certain point, I said, well, what do I want to do? What interests me? Okay, that's when I realized I have a love of people. I like working with people. I like using my written and oral skills to communicate. And the GBI was just a great place because I know I'm serving the people of the state of Georgia with the work that I do. And obviously, our parents do know a lot and they do have our best interests in mind. But when it comes to a career, you need to really be doing it for you.